hear you now.
You can hear me now. Okay. I just have to be on speakerphone, apparently.
That's strange.
Oh, that's the wonderful world of phones for me.
Got you.
I have superb luck.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right, all things considered. I can't complain.
That's good. Good to hear.
How are you?
I'm doing just fine. It's a little late here. It's like 11 my time, but I'm doing well. And how's your day been? I'm just getting sound adjusted while you talk.
Oh, sure. I've been fine. I work several day jobs, so that's always an adventure. My day job is events and technical theater. I'm a lighting and sound person by trade.
Oh, cool.
So it's every day is something different, and it's usually something crazy something crazy and impossible that we somehow make work.
That's fun.
But it's a career I wouldn't trade for anything.
Very cool.
Yeah, I've been super fortunate.
That's good. That's good, man. So the way that this works is I am recording this conversation. Our levels are fine now, by the way.
Awesome.
And I'll just ask you some questions, and feel free to speak at length as long as you want to. And you can change the subject if you want to. And I like things to meander and go down different alleyways and everything. So it should be pretty relaxed. And then I'll text you the information on when it's going to be published after we're done and after I figure that out.
Outstanding. I'm a meandering type, so this should go well.
Okay. So let's start easy. What's your name?
My name is Matt Richter. I write and perform music under the moniker Autodealer and have since 2002. That's that.
And where are you in time and space?
I am currently in Los Angeles, California, where I've been a resident since 2003. Prior to that, I lived in San Luis Obispo, California, where I attended both high school and college. Prior to that, I don't like to admit it, but I was born and raised in Florida, so I've got kind of a bi-coastal flavor.
And is there a story behind the name Autodealer?
Yeah, in high school and part of college, myself and a group of friends were gambling addicts. We would often go down to the Chumash Casino and play blackjack because they didn't really card, and we were happy to give them money. So on one trip back, we were talking about the actual what went into gambling, the business of gambling, and they had just started using auto shufflers. And I said jokingly, it's only a matter of time until they start using auto dealers. So the name actually sprung from what I perceived to be a time and place when robots would replace humans in all things, not knowing then that eventually they would in the worst possible ways.
All right. That makes sense. I thought it was more from like a car point of view, but that's interesting. So do you still
much
gamble?
After the fact, not nearly as much as I used to. For fun a couple times a year. I still take way more risks than I should. That's just kind of a life thing.
In what manner? Like, are you like an extreme sports guy or something?
I've always had, this is where the rambling is going to come in. I've always had a really odd relationship with mortality. I was my parents' primary caretaker for almost my entire life. So death was always, around and threatening, and I just kind of shrugged it off. So as a lighting designer specifically, I've done really stupid things on ladders. I've done really stupid things on scaffolding. I've had friends who have broken their necks and backs being far more cautious than I have been. It led to a long stretch of my life where I was, I can't really use the word experimenting because I was a regular user, but, using a lot of drugs. Alcohol was a factor at some point. And it wasn't because I was it wasn't because I wasn't interested in living or didn't care about my life. I think I was trying to live as much as I could in the time that I have.
Mm.
Because I never knew my parents as not sick people or
Yeah.
not, old sick people. So I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to only be known as that one thing, which unfortunately is what happens to all of us. So I think I'm a lot tamer now in my old age, but I still act like a jackass from time to time.
I see. And
Uh,
so did you develop kind of a live in the now sort of philosophy?
Yeah, which it's weird. It was kind of delayed for me because I started the Auto Dealer project in college, and I would play at pretty regularly. I would open for lots of bands that were coming through town because San Luis Obispo was situated halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco. It wound up being a great stop for a lot of indie bands who didn't want to make the long drive from the 7 or 8 hour drive from LA to San Francisco. And it was also a college town. So the radio station would promote shows, and you could reliably get 40 to 50 kids piled up into the local pot pie shop, which was where a lot of the bands played. It was called the Z Pie. So you could stop, play for a bunch of kids, sell some merch, get some pies, grab some beers, and have a generally good time, and honestly break up the otherwise monotonous drive. I got a lot of opportunities to play, for some pretty awesome bands, in the early 2000s. And I had opportunities then for professional development that I just was not prepared to take. I often wonder, how my life would have turned out if I had pursued music more seriously then. Because oddly enough, I had more opportunities then than I do now, which was weird because I wasn't pursuing it as seriously then. So, in some ways, I was reckless then with my career, and I'm more conservative with my career now. I know the story had a point. I'm just struggling to find what it was. This is where the meandering takes a turn for the worse.
Oh, this I think I was related to a question about living in the now at some point. I also found it.
Yeah.
I found it interesting that you talked about pies. What kind of pies are you talking about?
Pot pies. Like literally, it was a pot pie shop. They
Cool.
had amazing pot pies, and there were only 2 of them in the state. Well, the other one I think was in Tahoe. I'm pretty sure they've both closed by now. But it was a pot pie shop with a little stage in the corner and a tiny PA system, and they had amazing bands play there. Landing played there. Not Windy Carl. Film School played there. Maserati played there. Lots of bands that were up and coming in the early 2000s played there. The Swords Project was a regular band that played there. So it wound up being a wonderful little venue that you would never think of as being a place to see awesome music.
That's cool. So, what is with your music? What sort of instrumentation does it have?
So I'm admittedly a terrible musician. I play guitar not very well. I play piano. I can carry a tune. I really rely on technology to help me say what I'm trying to say with music. So 80% of what I record is digital. It's all virtual instruments. Ableton is really my instrument. But I am able to still layer in the actual guitars and real piano where I can to help try and keep it grounded in some respect. I have a great deal of respect for electronic musicians who can do it entirely electronically. I have a great deal of respect for musicians who do it entirely acoustically. I can't do either one proficiently enough to be happy about it. So I dabble in both, and make it work enough that I'm happy with it. And the fact that other people listen to it too is kind of a bonus, I think. Because I'm asked frequently by friends specifically who are like, what genre of music do you play, Matt? And I struggle to find an answer because I really write music that I would want to listen to. So I steal from all sorts of genres. Classical, ambient, shoegaze, post-rock, and just mash it up into something that I would want to listen to myself.
Very cool.
And that's a very selfish way of explaining it, but that's really kind of what I do.
And okay, how long have you been like releasing like recordings of yours, would you say?
I found my very first EP, which I released in 2002. It my very first record I got to release as I opened for Mono. Mono played at the auditorium at my college. They were on the tour for I think it was One Step More and You Die. It was their second. I think it was their second album. So they weren't playing gigantic venues yet, but they blew the roof off the place. They were incredible. And here I am with my guitar and broken pedals, selling my very first EP. So my very first record came out in 2002.
Okay, cool.
We made it. Some friends helped me do individual watercolor CDR labels. We handmade the covers. I found one copy. I think it might be the only copy that exists anymore because it was flimsy. And honestly, I have no idea what I was doing with those recordings or even how I recorded it at the time. But I mean, that's 21 years ago. It's been a minute.
Okay, wow. And okay, so you mentioned that you often play a blend of acoustic and electronic instruments. Which did you begin learning first? Did you first learn an instrument like acoustically, or did you first learn to program electronics?
Oh, I started with piano. My my mom was a church organist, and my dad sang. They were both very involved in the arts. They ran a community theater for 30 years. So all of this is genetic. I was doomed from the start. But
Okay.
I started with piano. Never really paid attention to what my mom was trying to teach me. Was able to sight read music. Never played piano professionally or anything like that. It became a hobby, but I always regretted not being more serious about learning it because now that I'm trying to actually understand what it is that I'm doing, it's much harder. And my biggest skill set and in everything I do is my ability to learn. That's my real talent is learning. So I'm glad that I'm doing it now and developing an understanding of what I was doing almost on accident before, and now developing that into something more intentional.
Yeah, I
Which has
got
been
you.
a really fascinating process for me personally.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it. Did you have like I'm trying to word this.
Sure.
Did you have like an intentional philosophy going into your like this project, or is it more of a you developed it through experimentation?
Um, it's a combination of both. I tend to start with song titles. Since everything I've done so far has been instrumental, the titles are really the only hint as to what I'm trying to say with the piece. So I have a whole book of just pages and pages of titles, and sometimes I'll assemble the titles in a way that forms an album, right off the bat, and then I'll write the songs that sound like that title.
Hmm.
Or occasionally I'll be trying to write a piece to a title and realize that I'm doing it wrong and that the piece actually wants to be called something completely different that I hadn't thought of before.
Hmm.
Um, it's almost I love the Paul McCartney story about filling in lyrics with fake lyrics until he can actually write them. Um, I find that's really true for my writing process as well. Not to compare myself to Paul McCartney by any stretch. My God, that's not what I'm trying to say. But in terms of process, that's I find that to be really valuable and honestly just the way I work in general. Um, I write to something or I definitely have something in mind. I struggle to come up with a melody or a piece and then put it down. It's really hard for me to get what I hear in my head out onto the screen, as it were.
Got you.
Um,
Do you have?
so I try.
Are you like a chord progression person, or do you use like individual layered lines, or how does that work?
Oh, I'm all over the map. I will generally, most of the time, I will start with the piano line. I will be tinkering and I will find something that I like, and then I will struggle to recreate it. And in doing so, I come up with another part of the song. So the majority of my songwriting style is me trying to cover myself, doing something that I did 2 minutes ago. And that's particularly true with guitar stuff. I sit down to play guitar and I will play something absolutely mind-blowing that everyone would want to listen to, and then I spend the rest of my life trying to recreate it.
I see.
And so what I wind up recording is my attempt to get say what I'm trying to say.
I got you. Okay, very cool. Now, what about traveling? Have you done much traveling to promote this project?
Earlier this year, I went on my first tour. I used to play live, like I said, for the college radio station. I would play live, 3-4 nights a month, easily. I would go to see concerts 5 nights a week and open for, a good handful of them. And then I stopped entirely. I stopped recording. I stopped playing live. Not intentionally. It just kind of fell by the wayside for literally 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And then in 2015, I started recording again. That's when I discovered Ableton. And that's when I started pursuing that seriously. And from 2015 until now, it's just been a studio project. But this year was the first year that I actually went out on tour. I got to tour with the Corrupting Sea, who is Jason Lamoreaux of Somewherecold fame. And he basically called me and said, so I'm going to tour the Midwest and you're going to come play with me. And I said, okay.
Nice.
And yeah, we did 7 dates over 10 days, and it was absolutely amazing. It was incredible.
Very cool.
I hadn't gotten the rush of playing live in so long. I'd almost forgotten what a joy it is.
What? How did you get hooked up with Jason?
So Jason posted in a Facebook group an open submission for tracks for a fundraiser for the Trevor Project. At the time, I had been shopping around Autodealer to various labels, all very small. None of them were interested. And I thought to myself, well, if this isn't a sign, I don't know what is. My full-time job is for the Los Angeles LGBT Center. I'm the technical director of their 2 venues there. So I'm in charge of the lights, sound projection, etc. And Jason's record label was doing a fundraiser for the Trevor Project, which helps teens who are at risk, LGBT teens who are at risk. I thought to myself, well, if this isn't a sign, I don't know what is. So I sent him a track, said, hi, I hope you don't mind. I saw your post, and I would love to contribute a track. And literally the next day, he emailed me back saying, if you have more stuff like this, I'll sign you right now.
Oh, very cool.
Fortunately, I did. I had been stockpiling, and we got to chatting, and we've since become, best friends. We get along like basically like brothers. So when he called and said, guess what, we're going on tour, I said, let me get the time off work.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
And it's the craziest part for me is that there are people who release music on Somewherecold, like Yellow 6 in particular, who I used to play in college as a radio DJ. So fact that my releases now sit in the same catalog as Yellow 6 is just, it still blows my mind. Like I can't imagine a day where I get tired of talking about music, of making music, of being a part of it. Now that I'm a part of it again, and I just can't imagine a day where this isn't as important to me as it is now.
Oh man, I'm so happy for you.
Oh, I'm over the moon. The fact that I let music get away from me for so long is probably the biggest mistake of my life, and one that I won't make again.
Uh-huh.
If I never sell another record, it doesn't matter. It's music was always such a big part of my life, and I will never let it go again.
Man, that's awesome. So, I got a couple more questions.
Sure.
Number 1, or I guess it's like number 18 now. Do you have anything you'd like to promote?
Yeah, actually, on the tour that I just mentioned with the Corrupting Sea, we released a split EP that comes out September 7th. September 7th, I think. It's either the 1st or the 7th. I'm sure that there will be some fact checking done after the interview. It comes out September. We sold it. We sold the physical copies on tour, and it's being sold digitally. I don't know if there are any physical copies left, but it's being officially released through Somewherecold. 3 tracks from Autodealer, 3 tracks from the Corrupting Sea, and 1 track from our co-project, which is called Transverse. That's released the same day as the second full-length Transverse album, which I'm incredibly proud of. Again, I tend to be a passenger in these things. Jason emailed me and said, we're going to do a project together. And I said, okay. And he started emailing me stems, and then there was Transverse. I love the first album that we did. The second album, I think, is light years ahead of where we were for the first record, and we're already working on the third. It's awesome. It's like for that 7 years of not making music, I just pent all of it up, and now it's all coming out all at once, which I have no complaints about. The latest Autodealer record came out in July. The follow-up is already mastered and coming out. I believe it's coming out in March. I don't want to jump the gun on that. And I'm halfway through recording the follow-up to that. I tend to have streaks of really severe insomnia.
Yep.
And that's unfortunately when I do my best work.
Same.
So I'll just go to the computer and put on my headphones and write for 4 or 5 hours. And it turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy where I can't sleep because I want to go work on music. And then I can't really go to my day job because I didn't sleep because I was too excited to work on music. So I'm still trying to find a balance there, which I find is a general theme in my whole life.
Yeah.
It's been weird. I was like I said earlier, I was my parents' primary caretaker. My mom passed away in 2017, and my dad passed away in 2021. God, it's already been 2 years. So it's been really weird, finding out who I am outside of being a caretaker, which I think has made the music that much more important to me. Because I don't think that the tour ever would have happened if my dad was still alive. My dad passed away at 93, and he was a handful. So it's weird starting your life in your 40s.
There's something about death that puts things in perspective.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. It's I think a lot of the risk taking went by the wayside once my parents were gone, because it really solidified the idea that we all check out at some point.
Right.
And also I got married since then. I've kind of settled down a little bit. But by the same token, I'm also being more adventurous in different ways, like with going on tour. It's something that I can't imagine not doing again. Again, don't want to jump the gun on anything, but I can assure you that there will be future dates with the Corrupting Sea.
Well, let me know if you guys come all the way to North Carolina.
We would love to get to the East Coast. It's touring with the Corrupting Sea just is. It was so easy. It was so natural. We get along so well. It just clicked. My day job being in events, we would show up to venues that, how do I put this politely, weren't as technically savvy as some other venues might be. So when we arrived to a cafe in Milwaukee and we're literally handed a milk crate with an audio mixer and a bunch of cables, Jason looked at me and said, "Boy, I hope you know how to set this up." To which I said, "That's my day job." So I just jumped right in and got everything set up. But I kind of loved that. While it was panic-inducing for Jason, for me it kind of brought me back to playing those shows at ZPi, where we would show up, we would set up their small PA, and then amazing bands like Maserati would play. Granted, we're no Maserati, but it had that same feeling.
Yeah.
I don't mean to diminish anything that myself or anybody at the label has done. I just don't want to sound like I'm, full of myself either. I don't want enthusiasm to be mistaken for, I don't know, whatever the term is that
I
I'm
wouldn't
looking for.
worry about it. I wouldn't worry about it. It's good to be excited about your own projects, man. So,
it's hard to be excited about things living in Hollywood, or working in Hollywood, living in Los Angeles, where everybody acts so put upon all the time.
oh man, DIY is all I do. DIY is my entire life. So I don't, I'm over here in North Carolina in the eastern part of the state. I'm not in Los Angeles or anything, so you don't have to worry about anything like that. So, final question.
Yeah.
Is there anything you were hoping to be asked about that I didn't ask you about?
Oh man, I'm just so excited that I was asked anything at all. And I know that's I don't mean I feel inconsequential a lot of the time because when I do my day job right, you don't know that I was there at all. So talking about myself and talking about music is weird and new and exciting for me, and I just don't want to. I tend to be a people pleaser, so I don't want to screw up any of the answers.
It's your interview.
I get that. I'm just so thankful to people like Jason and people like you who are paying attention and listening and talking about. I'm not just talking about Autodealer. I'm talking about like all the music that tends to get left by the wayside. There is so much phenomenal music on Somewhere Cold, and so many other micro labels that just doesn't get heard.
That's right.
And I mean, some of my absolute favorite music is on labels that I don't know how anybody else hears about. There's an artist called Server Farms that has one of my favorite releases of the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And they're on Disfold Records, which is in Canada, and it's one of the most brilliant records I've heard in a long time. And everybody that I talk to about it has no idea what I'm talking about, which is how I feel talking about my own stuff most of the time. So I tend to over-explain, and I tend to get way too enthusiastic. And it can be a bit much for people who aren't really into music. So when my theater friends are like, "Oh, Matt, what are you doing music-wise?" and I talk to them like I'm talking to you in this interview, it usually ends with them saying, "Oh, okay," and then just walking away.
Well, we've all been there.
There is no experience like running into a friend wearing an Autodealer shirt and putting on the shirt and pointing at me, and I didn't even ask them to order it. It blew my mind. So it's very gratifying that people who only know me as one thing are getting to know me as another, which it's like I said before, it's kind of like my journey as well, figuring out who I am post being a caretaker. It's all very exciting.
Well, that's excellent, and I'm glad you're doing it. It sounds like you're doing it for the right reasons. You're internally motivated, and honestly, like learning from experiences of trauma and people passing away really has a tendency to focus what brings us meaning in our life, and it sounds like this brings you a lot of meaning, and I hope that our listeners and readers will find some meaning in what you do too.
Me too. At the end of the day, if one person listens to the records and gets something from it, then I'm thrilled. I'm just happy to be here.
Well, thanks for agreeing to the interview, Matt.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And I think this will likely appear in our October 1st edition, but I'm going to text you the specific information, if that's okay with you.
Okay. That's my birth month.
Oh, very good. All right.
That would be awesome. I mean, I'm happy whenever it comes out. I'm over the moon.
Nice. Well, you have a good night.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye-bye.